diving catch robs Pujols of extra bases, 2 down.
So 2 home runs, 3 RBIs takes away probably 2 runs there defensively. That's 5 runs he's involved in. Matt Chapman.
Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner of Dell. Onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On he goes. Which is hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutchen. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
Well, all right. Welcome into this edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show. I, of course, am your host, Kevin. And as always, the man that brings on the power, we're talking about Vince. How we doing tonight, Vince?
Great. How about yourself?
We're doing outstanding, and we bring some, just like last week, extra special guests along with us, and that, of course, is Mr. Graham Wallace. He is our Belly Up's own beat writer about the Toronto Blue Jays and the master of all things baseball. How are we doing tonight, Graham?
Doing great, Kevin. Really happy to be joined with you guys again.
All right. So, it's Monday. We're a couple days past the trade deadline now, and so we can kind of sit back and take a look at what's going on out there. And I have to say that even seasoned baseball people had to be surprised about all the activity that occurred right, at the end of the Friday day. And so, Graham, what was your impression of the baseball trade deadline?
Wow, I think it's the busiest trade deadline day that I remember.
I don't remember anything more busy either.
The quality of the players that were moved and the number of moves was just fascinating. You really had to be locked into whether it's your TV or your computer or both, really, to keep track of all the moves. Obviously, the big one was Scherzer and Trey Turner going to the Dodgers. It seemed like the Padres had him locked up. Somehow that got away from them. And then Giants, obviously, last minute get Chris Bryant, which, in my opinion, was the best position player available. So a lot of moving parts. A lot of teams got better. A few teams got a lot worse. A lot to talk about, certainly.
Yep. That's absolutely for sure. So would you say the Scherzer move, is that the biggest trade news of the day?
I think it has to be. I mean, it kind of went through a few different waves. Scherzer was on the block. He wasn't on the block. Washington was playing pretty well. And then they dropped quite a few of their more recent games. He's back on the block. I definitely thought San Diego would be a team that would be aggressive. It seemed like they had a deal in place. And then for whatever reason, Dodgers were able to swoop in there. They gave up their top 2 prospects, Josiah Gray and Keibert Ruiz, pitcher and catcher, respectively. They could be cornerstones of the Washington franchise for the next decade or so. But hey, Dodgers are in that position to make a trade. And if you think you're good enough to win a World Series, you're only a player or 2 away. You got to go and make that move. And so I definitely respect the front office of that team because they're all in. They're going for it.
Yeah, the Dodgers take a lot of flack because, they've got money, but they also have the farm system. So they do both things. And so I was quite happy to see Scherzer go to the Dodgers, of course, and that the Padres didn't get him. So I was quite happy about that. So, as you said, there were a lot of moving parts. And so beyond Scherzer, what, if anything, was the major addition to a club?
Well, I mean, I look at Anthony Rizzo. He's been on fire since he's been in pinstripes. He seems like a natural Yankee. He just looks like a Yankee. If you think they paired him with Joey Gallo, 2 power hitting, left-handed bats, the Yankees definitely look like a more dangerous lineup. And then last minute, they were able to add Andrew Heaney. By no means is he even close to being an ace, but he could maybe slot in towards the back of their rotation. They're certainly better than they were a week ago. And they've been playing really well since those additions were made. And also I look at the White Sox, adding Craig Kimbrell and Ryan Tepera. Once they get to the 7th inning, that's going to be about all she wrote when you're going up against the White Sox. They're going to be a very tough team to come back against. So those are the couple of things that definitely stood out to me when looking at Friday's events.
So Kimbrel, is he going to be the closer, or is he going to slide into the 8th inning?
That's a great question. I've seen this come up on Twitter a few times. I think he's a bit more suited to be the 9th inning guy. He's been that guy for about a decade now. He's had a great career. I've seen things like he's on the pathway to the Hall of Fame. I don't know about that just yet, but he has had a great career, multiple-time All-Star. I think I trust Hendricks more in the 7th, 8th innings, or 8th inning, I guess, as a setup type of guy. And then I'd be confident in passing that baton over to Kimbrel. He's been the guy his whole career. He's shown no real signs of letting up. He did have a bit of a rough season with Chicago a couple years ago, but he seems to be back to his usual self now. So if I'm the White Sox, I got to be feeling confident with the late lead.
So Vince, I know you got some questions, so dive in.
Well, kind of broader scope. This is what Major League Baseball needed, right? I mean, the big names moving, a lot of activity. They controlled the news cycle for the day, where usually anytime anything breaks with Major League Baseball, the NBA or the NFL has something to go with it. And the Major League Baseball trade deadline competed with the SEC getting 2 major programs. It competed with the NBA draft. It competed with some trades in the NBA as well. And I think it held its own. And so I'm curious your thoughts on Major League Baseball and the steps that they've taken, maybe not even on purpose, but to help themselves draw in fans here, especially through this trade deadline.
Well, I think Major League Baseball knows what it's up against. NFL is a huge product. So is the NBA. Some of these contracts that have going on with ESPN, it's really big money. So for them to own the day is really big. And I think they're aware of that. They've taken some PR hits in the last couple of years with some of the things that have gone on, either with different scandals or, some brushback with the commissioner, Rod Manfred. But I think people deep down, there's a lot of guys like us, or people like us, women as well, who love the game of baseball. They love the business of baseball. That they like to see big names move in, and to see some of the teams like a Philadelphia or an Atlanta that seemed like they were on the outside looking in. Even my Blue Jays, I thought they were going to stand still, and they made some big moves. So that means there's more teams that are competitive. There's more excitement. And even to some of the teams like Chicago or Washington that saw a lot of their players offloaded, they have to be confident that their general managers are doing the right things to put them in a position to be competitive in the next couple of years. It's tough to see a Chris Bryant and an Anthony Rizzo, all these great players get moved in one day, but they got to realize they had a great championship run. They did win a World Series, and now it's time for them to start establishing some new stars in those markets.
Well, you know what it is, Graham, is they watched this very show because if you remember, Vince, 3 weeks ago, we talked about how the Cubs needed to just pretty much take it down to the stubs. And that's what they did. So
yeah, that's way to pat us on the back there, Kevin.
I'm here to help. So,
well, I'll just point out that last week I also said Scherzer was heading to LA. I don't know if you guys remember that.
So, Graham is on it. We're just on it. That's all there is to that. So,
Graham, the splashes were out west. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm intrigued by what the NL East did. The Braves, they added some smaller pieces, but important pieces to their team. The Philadelphia Phillies, I think, improved a fair amount. And then the Mets made some moves too. So the Mets currently lead the NL East, but DeGrom's injured, and there's a lot of question marks behind what's going to happen the rest of the season with him. What did the trade deadline do to bring some excitement to the race in the NL East?
Yeah, I really love what all three of those teams did. Now, I may not necessarily agree with it. I think I said something along the lines of the NL East teams are not really in contention for a championship, but that doesn't mean I don't admire what they did. The Mets bringing in Javier Baez, I love this move. He pairs with one of his good buddies, Francisco Lindor, which should be a really fun side of the infield for the Mets. He hit a home run in his first game. I think he's made for New York. He's a big market type of player. He's an excitable player, so I love that. And then the Phillies bringing in a couple of pitchers, the Texas two-step combo, if you will, of Ian Kennedy and Kyle Gibson. So that's definitely going to improve their starting rotation. It's going to improve their bullpen. And I don't really think they're that far away. And then finally, we got the Braves. Hey guys, they needed pretty much an entire new outfield. They bring in Eddie Rosario, they bring in Jock Peterson a little bit earlier, and they also bring in Adam Duvall, who had a lot of success with them in the truncated season last year. He's definitely got a power bat. So I think they did what they can to kind of supplement the guys that they've lost with injuries and other off the field issues.
And they brought in
competitive team. Sorry, go ahead.
And they brought in Jorge Soler as well.
That's the other one. Yes.
Yeah. So you got that depth now there after the injuries that they had. Atlanta, the pitching is an issue in Atlanta, but talent wise, man, they've been depleted by injury. But the way Swanson has played this year, he's played much better and more consistently better. And then, of course, they're set at second base. He's been phenomenal. First base set. Been phenomenal. Yep. So yeah, filling out those pieces. Austin Riley has started to pick up his consistency better as well. So that outfield was a huge question mark. And if they're going to contend for a playoff spot, really, if they're going to contend for their division, that they had to do something. And I'm impressed with the moves. They're smaller. They weren't splashy, but to me, they got better. They got the help that they needed. But I love the Kyle Gibson move in Philadelphia. And I know he's had some rough outings here as of late. But I think
yesterday, Vince, if you saw that, and he pitched pretty well. So
yeah, I think a change of scenery to a winning organization, to a team that's going somewhere that has some incredible veteran talent on it. I think it's a great move for them. I think it's going to help Kyle Gibson get back on track, and I think they're the team to watch. Honestly, I think they're the team to watch in the East right now. I think they're going to surpass the Mets.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Vince, I think that the even more important move that Philadelphia made was they brought on in Ian Kennedy. Because remember we talked a couple weeks ago about how Philadelphia, if it was an 8-inning game, they'd be in the first place in the NL East. But they brought in a closer, and he gave a couple runs yesterday. But I think he is the key to that team. If they can get something going on in the late innings, they can do some damage. So
yeah, I agree.
So, Graham, we talked about some of the winners. Was there any team or players that you thought not so much loser time?
Who flew the L during the trade deadline?
A big L flying around somewhere in baseball. Where would you say that is?
Okay. Well, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but the Padres, I mean, with them failing to pull off the Scherzer trade, I know they pivoted and they ended up getting Daniel Hudson, who was a World Series hero for Washington a couple of years ago. But you got to think that they were in on Jose Berrios as well. Failing to land that big name pitcher as well has got to sting. They're about 5 games back of the Giants right now in that NL West. I don't want to call them losers. They've got a great team. They have a chance to make some noise in October, certainly. But I think they definitely wanted to improve their team, and they did incrementally with that Hudson move. And, Adam Frazier as well is a great ball player, but I don't necessarily think they needed more offense. They definitely wanted to try to improve their pitching, particularly their starting pitching. So I think that's a bit of a miss for me. The Red Sox got Kyle Schwarber, but they did
whenever
very little.
That is, yeah.
Well, exactly. He's hurt right now. Is he going to play first base? They desperately need a first baseman. They didn't really get one. He could probably play first, but he hasn't really done it at all. And they added Hansel Robles to their bullpen, which is not really a huge add. I think they feel like they're playing with house money. They're better than they were supposed to be, but I think this is a contending team right now. And I think a lot of people in Red Sox Nation are disappointed that they didn't do more to kind of help themselves in that regard. The Astros made a couple of moves kind of earlier for bullpen help with Kendall Graveman and Rafael Montero. Would have liked to see them do a little bit more in that situation, particularly with the amount of pieces and the quality of the pieces that the A's were able to add. When you think about Starling Marte, Josh Harrison, also Yan Gomes, and Andrew Chafin. So they added 4 quality pieces, and the Astros just did some tweaking to their bullpen. I still think, as I'm with Vince on this one, they're probably the best team in the American League. But they could have done some more to distance themselves from the pack, in my opinion. And then there was a few sellers, I think, kind of stayed pat, and they had opportunities to add to their prospect base. And those would be the Rockies. Really didn't do much. They didn't move Trevor Story. They didn't move John Gray, which I thought was very surprising. They didn't move Blackman. They didn't move any of these guys. The Twins made a couple of moves, but I thought there were some other opportunities to be had there. Now, I will give them credit for the couple of prospects they got back from the Blue Jays. Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson, they already have a pretty good system, so they did okay there. But I did think there was a couple other trades they could have made. And also the Tigers. I definitely thought Jonathan Scope was a guy that would have been moved. I don't know if the asking price was too much, but they've been playing a little bit better than people thought lately. And not that they think they still have a chance to make it, but I thought they had a chance to kind of put more prospects in the cupboard there, if you will.
Kevin, let's talk about the Rockies for a second, because it seems like Trevor Story is incredibly frustrated that he's still there.
Big L right there.
And then John Gray, like you said, Blackman. I mean, the Rockies are going nowhere. They just don't have enough pieces in place to compete with what else is in their division. And I mean, Graham, why didn't they make a move?
It's a great question. I saw this being batted around on a few of the networks. I think a lot of teams were calling about Story. He was one of the most coveted players around there. I think the White Sox were definitely kicking the tires on him. I think the Mets were interested in him. I think even the Dodgers were probably asking about him. They ended up getting Trey Turner, and I don't want to say they settled for Trey Turner. He's a terrific player, but I'm very surprised by this. I think the Rockies had the courage of their convictions. And I think if they didn't get the offer that they were looking for, they were happy to sit back, collect that compensatory draft pick, and kind of move forward. They've done pretty well in trades in the past. And I think they've taken a bit of a PR hit with the whole Nolan Arenado trade. A lot of people didn't think they got a fair market value. You rarely do when you trade a player of that caliber. I think they should have probably done more, but we don't know what happened on the insides of these conversations. Maybe they felt like they were getting lowballed or something like that. But sometimes it's better to do something to show that you're trying rather than just doing nothing.
So I think, Graham, that the biggest L of all has to go to the Seattle Mariners, because as we
forgot about
last
them.
Week,
Yep.
I remember last week we were talking about how they haven't made it to the playoffs in 20 years, and they're the only team that has not made a World Series. And so what do? They trade Kendall. You talked about him earlier, Kendall Graveman, to a division rival. So if you happen to watch baseball in Texas, as I do here, you saw that the Rangers, who are absolutely abysmal, have 2 ninth-inning walk-off home runs. If Kendall Graveman had been in that bullpen, maybe that does not happen. So you cannot, if you're expecting to make a playoff push, you cannot lose to the Rangers like that. So to me, Seattle Mariners, big L for you.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Jonah Heim is the guy who got both of those walk-off dingers, by the way. So good for him.
The catcher for the Rangers, yes.
Yeah,
one
first guy
right-handed
since
and one left-handed Saturday.
That's right. I thought I heard them say first guy since Albert Pujols to have walk-off home runs in 2 straight games. So good for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I agree with you. However, I will say Seattle, they have a very bright future. Jared Kelnick came up earlier this year. He really didn't do much, but I still think he has a bright future. Julio Rodriguez is another guy they have in that system. I'm kind of surprised they didn't move a guy like Haniger. He probably could have yielded them another prospect or two, a pretty impressive haul, you'd think. I still think Seattle has a bright future, and they didn't want to mortgage that. But you think you're so close right now. They were close to a deal with Whit Merrifield. That didn't end up happening. It's got to be disappointed to the fans in the Pacific Northwest of that team, because there hasn't been a lot to cheer about, and they feel like they're so close, and to just sit on their hands, that's got to make you want to pull your hair out if you're a fan of that team. So certainly another L. I should have had them in my kind of loser column there as well. Good call by you, Kev.
All right, so
we haven't talked about them much yet, but Chicago Cubs, obviously they sold pretty much everybody. But it's interesting with the White Sox trade, they actually got good value back with Madrigal coming back.
Next year, getting Madrigal.
Yeah. And then, Javier Baez already said, I wouldn't mind re-signing in Chicago at the end of this season as a free agent. So maybe Chicago turns this around pretty fast just in the free agent market next year. But, I've got a fair number of Cubs friends or acquaintances. I don't know I don't know if we can
I
be
grew up
friends.
about 30 miles from that stadium, so
Yeah.
there's
So
a lot of people that I know that they were crying over the weekend.
yeah, being a Brewers and Packers fan, I have a
Yeah.
lot of Bears
Okay.
and Cubs friends, but nonetheless, they took it pretty well. And you mentioned it earlier that they've got to have some confidence in the GM that he knows what he's doing. But do you think the Cubs are in a long-term rebuild, or do you think this is something they're going to come back within the next, let's say, 4 years and be contenders again in the Central?
Yeah, I'm going to take option number 2. I did like the return on a couple of those deals. Chicago's a big city. The Cubs are a very legendary team. I think they're going to draw good free agents, quality free agents. They also have Jed Hoyer at the helm. He knows what he's doing. He's rebuilt this team before from one of the worst teams in baseball to a World Series champion. And I think he has the skills to do it again. Nick Madrigal is a guy who could come in and help them right away, but they also got some pretty good prospects coming back as well. They still have some decent guys on the roster. I don't think this is going to be a really long-term rebuild like we've seen in other places like Baltimore. I think they'll be probably ready to compete again by about, say, 2024, 25. It's going to be a couple of tough years, I think. And it was a painful Friday, but they just got to have faith in their front office that they know what they're doing. They have a plan, and they'll get back there soon. Same goes for Washington, I'd say.
And the good news,
it has to be, because let's face it, Bryant and Rizzo and Baez all hit home runs in their first games with their new team. So that's really got to sting.
the good news for the Cubs is they're in the NL Central, and the Reds, they're never going to spend that much money. The Pirates are not going to be good for a long time. The Brewers eventually are going to run out of money, and they'll get back down to lower spending. And then that leaves you with St. Louis, which is always going to try to put together a roster that's competitive. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about just winning the division, which is what's most important at the beginning of it all, I think the Cubs are going to be back pretty quick. Also, I agree with you.
All right. So is that pretty much it on the trade subject? All right. So Graham, how do you think this impacts the pennant races? Because we're in August now, and we're getting ready to, sprint towards the end of the season. How do you see this impacting? We talked about the NL East a minute ago. What about some of these other divisions do you see are the biggest changeovers, if there are any?
Well, I could see, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but the American League West, I think, could tighten up a little bit. I really like what Oakland did. I wasn't sure how aggressive they were going to be, but they got, a brand new center fielder and Marte. I don't know how they're going to play that with, they've also got a pretty solid defensive center fielder in Ramon Laureano. But they're going to be pretty steady defensively, certainly. I like Yan Gomes. Like I said, Josh Harrison, I think they really improved their team. They're 4 games back right now of Houston. I could see that race tightening up a little bit. I do think it's going to be a race to the finish in the National League West as well. And National League East, I think, should be a race to the wire as well. My opinion, I still think the Mets have the best team in that division, but the Phillies got better, and the Braves certainly got better as well. Finally, American League East, the Rays just handed Boston their butts 4 games in a row. They have a 1.5 lead in that division right now, but I still think it's a pretty tight race. Neither team did a whole lot. Obviously, the Rays added Nelson Cruz about a week and a half ago. I shouldn't say that's not much. That's a huge ad, but they didn't do anything since then. So that one, I think, is going to come down to the wire as well. The Central in both leagues there's not much of a race there, but the wild card races should be competitive in both leagues as well, I think.
So you see the Yankees made some moves. Do you think that helps them at all?
No doubt. Rizzo, like I said, he looks like he loves being a Yankee. He hit a home run in his first couple of games. Really solid defensively at first base as well. And Gallo, I think they made really good moves. I wasn't sure what they were going to do, how aggressive they were going to be. I'm not sure what position it puts their farm system in, which already wasn't super highly rated, but I really respect Brian Cashman for going for it like this, even though they're not having a typical Yankee season. I think it gives them a shot in the arm and a bit more diversity as far as their lineup is concerned. So the early returns are very good.
And if you're the Yankees, you really can't sell that you're going to be sellers to your fans, can you?
I don't think so. For them, it's championship or bust, and it's been 12 years, about 12 years going of bust now. It's kind of crazy to think they haven't won one since 2009, but that's the way it is there. It's a lot of pressure, and I don't think they'd have it any other way. You want to be somewhere where there's expectation to win, and that's exactly the way it is in the Bronx.
So one question I wanted to ask you, Graham, and we haven't even talked about this much, but your team, Toronto, is actually playing at home for the first time in over a year. Do you see that having anything positive for them?
Thank goodness. Yeah, I definitely do. They just coming off a sweep of the Royals over the weekend. They played Cleveland today. It was a 3:00 start. They ended up dropping that game in extra innings, 5-2. But you could feel the energy, guys. It's palpable. They had a nice presentation before the game. Charlie Montoya was visibly emotional. It's got to be a lot on these guys to be away from their home fans, away from their city. I know some of them may not live in Toronto, but still, for that long, it's really got to take its toll on them. So I see nothing but energizing phase of the schedule for the next 2 months or so, and they got to get on their horse. In my estimation, they got to win about 36, at a minimum 36 of these final 59 games in order to put themselves in it. That would put them at 90 wins, which may or may not be enough to get into the postseason. But they seem energized by the trades, the recent trades, energized by being home, and they just got to go out and play like they're capable of playing.
Well, you went out and got my Jose Barrios, so yay for you. It worked out for me. So.
Well, I mean, it wasn't cheap. We gave up our number 2 and number 4 prospects. I wasn't thrilled about that at first, but once I had some time to research and think about it a little bit, I'm like, I'm okay with this. To get a 27-year-old 2-time All-Star who's an innings eater. He had made 32 starts in both 18 and 19. He's on pace for over 200 innings this year. You're going to have to give up some good players in order to land a guy like Barrios. So I'm okay with it. I still think Austin Martin and Semyon Woods Richardson have star potential, but neither one of them is performing at a super high level in AA so far this year. So I'm okay with it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we could re-sign Barrios, and that'll ease the sting a little bit.
Yeah, Toronto's 4 games back in the wild card right now, so that's doable. I mean, you got to get the right pieces in place to do it, and if you're going to go for it this year, let's face it, even if all you get is the wild card, that gives you a chance. You got to be at least in the playoffs to have a shot. And so,
you don't make the playoffs, you're not winning. So
right, so yeah, let's go for it. And they gave up a steep price, but I don't know much about those guys, the prospects, but. Outside of just what I read. And, as a Brewers fan, I sit here and I go, get rid of the prospects and let's go for it. So yeah. I kind of lean more towards that. Sometimes the return you're going, oh, come on. But nonetheless, It is what it is. And I think it's a good move for Toronto overall as well.
I think so too.
All right. So Vince, anything further for Graham?
Yeah, one more question. New York Mets and Kumar Rocker unable to get him signed. Right. And I've seen 2 different stories. One was when they did his physical and everything, they didn't want to give him whatever. And then another one was he wanted more money than what they were offering. Yeah. So I don't know exactly which one's true, but either way, he's going back to Vanderbilt, I assume, for this year, and the Mets have nothing to show for their number 11 overall pick.
Well, they'll get a compensatory pick in next year's draft.
Yeah.
I believe that's how it works out. But, Rocker, along with Jack Leiter, was one of the 2 more well-known and highly regarded prospects of this past draft. I actually did watch some of the College World Series, including the deciding game. He struggled mightily in that game, and I don't know if that is one of the factors that caused him to slip all the way down to number 10. But he did. And then when he went to New York, I'm like, this is perfect. Big name prospect going to the big city. I thought it was a great match, but obviously when someone is a well-known prospect, sometimes they do want more money or different things in their contract. Didn't end up working out. So he's going to get a chance to go back to school and maybe improve his stock. He's going to have to go in the top 9 in order to do so. But that's something I think baseball needs to fix. You think it would be easier on the young man if he was able to sign with another team and then the Mets get something in return for that. But now he's got to go back to school and then go through the process again. It doesn't seem fair to the young man. And Mets fans can't be happy about that too, because he looks like he could be, he has all-star potential. So nothing you like to see. Blue Jays have definitely let a few guys slip away. It's part of the game, but it's something I'd like the Players Association to maybe take a look at and possibly improve.
I don't watch a whole lot of college baseball. Vanderbilt's one of the teams I follow between them and Kentucky, and because I grew up near Vanderbilt, now I live near Kentucky. But Rocker, he went down this year compared to last year. The previous year he was much better, looked a lot sharper. This year Leiter was the guy at Vanderbilt, and but Rocker's numbers were not bad as a whole. Season whole numbers, they were still really good, and I'm surprised. A guy like that, I'm surprised you don't find a way to make it work. And then, but a lot of the scene does go back on Kevin to this guy now has to go back to school. Yeah. And he's getting a good education at Vanderbilt, one of the few SEC schools that they actually go to class. And and maybe he comes back next year and is a top 3 pick.
Ben said that.
Yeah, I've got no problem with it. No problem whatsoever.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah. Then. Vanderbilt, they're bad at football, bad at basketball, they're good at baseball, and they're good at class. But
I love those uniforms. Could I just say the black with the yellow pinstripes? They're beauty.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed watching that.
Anchor down. There you go, Vanderbilt.
That's right.
Tune in Thursday to my SEC football preview. We will not say nice things about Vanderbilt.
I've been watching that, the Vanderbilt tier. Yeah, you're just killing them there. I'm here for it, though. That's okay. They're good at basketball every once in a while.
Every now and then, yes.
Every once in a while, yeah. All right, Graham. We appreciate you stopping in, and we're going to move to the fantasy portion of our show. So, Graham, just tell us where you can be found out there.
Yeah, of course. It's Bus Wallace. It's BUSWALLACE. B and the W are capitalized on Twitter. Come shout out me there. Also Instagram, same thing, lowercase. I'd love to hear from you. My articles are on there. Belly Up Sports, MLB tab. I usually come out with a couple articles every week. So I'd love to hear your feedback.
I'm sure it'll be positive.
Be kind.
That's right. Be kind to our man, Graham.
Good stuff, Graham. Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you guys.
All right. Appreciate it.
Okay. You bet.
All right, Vince. So we talked about the trade in the real world. And I just dropped an article today about who I thought were the fantasy winners of the trade deadline. And do you happen to have any, Vince?
Well, yes, I guess I do. When you come down to your fantasy winners from the trade deadline, you look at guys who now get in a better situation in the batting lineup. So you look at the guys that went to the Yankees, both Gallo and Rizzo. It's a better situation for them. Although offensively, the Cubs, Rizzo in the lineup was still around some good guys. But those are the kinds of things you look for. Guys that maybe were batting third behind not so great number 2 guy. Now they get in a better situation. Those are guys you're going to want to watch for and go. I think you look at the guys that went to Oakland as possible winners as well. Anybody that gets added to the Dodgers is going to be a plus. And I think the guys that we talked about earlier in Atlanta as well are guys to watch for, because there's some like Soler, for instance. He hasn't been crushing it this year by any stretch. I think he was even batting under 200, but he's just in a better situation now. And so the guys like that, Duvall, we've talked about him in past weeks.
Yes,
those kinds of guys are the guys that I'm looking at as winners. And then the other guys, honestly, we'll talk about some in the pickups, but is the Chicago Cubs. You got some young guys now that were getting sporadic play before. Now they're getting consistent play, and the Cubs are going to let them go to it. So those are guys to watch as well.
Like Patrick Wisdom comes right to mind.
Yep. Those are the guys that I would say are the main winners. I don't know that I would go with any pitchers as far as winners in the trade deadline. They are what they are for the most part. And if anything, they actually kind of go the wrong direction right after the trade, just because, depending on where they got traded to, because they're not used to those guys. They haven't been watching film on those batters that they're facing now, completely different divisions or conferences. So the first couple games can be rough, and you might be able to steal a guy in a trade because his first 2 outings with his new team doesn't look good. But overall, I think it's good. Kyle Gibson, if I'm going to give a winner to a pitcher, and I know I'm super high on Kyle Gibson, I think you put him in Philadelphia, and now he's got the bats around him to help him out a little bit more. Even though Texas hasn't been horrible, their record's not great.
They're
but
horrible, Vince. Let me just tell you, they're horrible.
But they've had some good stuff happen for him this year with the rookie, with Garcia, with Kyle Gibson in his year so far. So I think, maybe I said no pitchers, but I changed my mind. Kyle Gibson is a winner in my book.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 pitchers, Vince.
Okay.
One we talked about earlier is Ian Kennedy, because there just
He's
weren't
gonna
any
get
save
opportunity.
chances.
Yeah.
There weren't any save chances in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rangers just come off a 13-game losing streak. You're not getting any save chances.
Yeah.
He will get that in Philadelphia. Absolutely. And another guy is a guy that you've mentioned before, and that's Danny Duffy.
Yes.
Going from Kansas City to the Dodgers, even though I know he's on the injured list. I've already seen that David Price, they've already pulled him from the rotation. He came in relief yesterday.
Yeah.
So
which is where they wanted David Price
really
to be that long reliever.
They really did, and that
yeah.
That's all well and good. But if Danny Duffy can be Danny Duffy, he will definitely benefit, as will his owners. Because I already added him and put him on my injured list. So
yeah,
I'm really looking forward to the Duffy and the hitter that I think was the biggest winner. You mentioned him earlier. That's Joey Gallo. Because he goes from he just wasn't comfortable hitting in the new Texas ballpark. It wasn't like the old one where he had the jet stream in the right field. They didn't have that now. But he goes to one of the shortest right field porches in all of baseball. So he gets the ball up in the air, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so now that he's got Rizzo as well over there, that's a big time. I have been sour on Gallo as far as fantasy, but that's a winner. That's winning time for me, fantasy-wise, Joey Gallo. All right, so we mentioned it earlier. Some pickups we're going to talk about. So, Vince,
hey, real quick, Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what about losers? Guys that got to a worse situation.
One for you, Vince.
All right, give me yours first, and I've got one for you as well.
Okay, my biggest loser is Trevor Story. We talked about him a little while ago.
Yeah.
And, it's because the whole team, when they go out on the road, they stop hitting. So if you're an owner of Trevor Story, when they go out on the road, you're not going to get anything out of him. He might get some hits and, stuff like that, but he's not going to have the guys on base to drive in and, to build up his stats. So to me, Trevor Story is a big, big loser for his fantasy owner.
Yeah, mine is a position group, and it's the closer that is now a setup guy. The guys that aren't going to get saves, that were getting saves in the first half. You look at the White Sox, they made the trade for Kimbrel. So either Kimbrel or Hendricks. One of them's, or not Hendricks, but one. Someone's going to lose. Brad Hand was getting some saves, even though there wasn't a lot of opportunities in Washington. Now he gets traded. Now he's going to get less save opportunities. So if you were a guy that invested in saves early in the season, and now the guy that was getting you saves is no longer going to get the opportunity, that really, really stinks. I think Major League Baseball should be kinder to the fantasy owners. But nonetheless,
you happen to be one of those leagues that holds.
Right.
Which I don't know of any that do. I'm sure they're out there.
They're out there. Yeah, none of my leagues are.
Yeah. None of mine either. So
I think in Yahoo I do get points for holds on my relievers.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you on that. Except I think maybe Brad Hand, maybe they had torches for him when he left town because it was not pretty.
Right.
for him. So I don't know if anybody was actually owning him, first of all. So if you did, you might want to, hit the eject switch on him.
Right.
All right. So who do you have to pick up this week, man?
We mentioned him earlier, but for me, the main guy to look at is Patrick Wisdom. I think the opportunity that he gets now, we talked about him last week, I think, too. I actually dropped him last week, and then right after the trades, I picked him back up because now he's going to be playing every day. He does have some talent. He's already got 29 RBIs on the season, 16 home runs, 3 stolen bases. He's batting just under 270. So, he's a guy that I'm looking at, and I mentioned it earlier, those guys that are now going to get opportunities. Maybe David Bode's a guy to look at as well in Chicago that hasn't done much this year. He's got 27 RBIs. His batting average isn't good, but I think those are the guys you got to look at right now at this point in the season. And then we've said it for multiple weeks now, but the guys that are coming off of the injured list, you've got to pay attention to them. Chris Sale is coming off, it looks like, really soon now.
He had his 5th start in the minors, so
yeah. So you've got to watch those guys. You got to watch those guys on what they're doing. And then the other guys to watch for that are possibly around for pickups, you got to watch some of those guys in Oakland. Josh Harrison, he's only owned in 54% of leagues right now, on ESPN leagues at least. The move to Oakland is going to be really, really good for him. And so he's a guy I think that if he's available in your league, he's worth picking up. He's got in ESPN, he's eligible second base, third base, and outfield.
That's right.
And so those are the kind of guys that you want to get, because especially with the COVID stuff that's hitting, the injuries that are hitting, you need guys that have flexibility. Josh Harrison, to me, is a guy you got to jump on if he's available.
Yep, and I agree with that, Vince. And he's owned in 100% of Wilson Fantasy League, so you're good. I'm good to go there.
Okay.
So you mentioned about the versatility, and that's a couple guys that I'm going to put forward. And one of them's Eric Haas of the Detroit Tigers, because he plays the outfield, he plays catcher, he plays DH. He's in our lineup every single day. And we talked about how catcher is in the dump, and if you happen to have a guy like him that will be in your lineup every single day, and he's had hits of 12 of 13, so it's not like he's a bum. He's actually swinging a hot bat. And the second guy is just along with him is Dalton Varsho of Arizona. He's a catcher and he's an outfielder, and he's only open in 30% of leagues, 37% actually, and he has hits in 9 out of his 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those guys will be in the outfield, so you can put one or both in the catcher spot, and you're good. You're set. And we talked about Josh Harrison. Ahmed Rosario, he's a shortstop, but he also plays the outfield. And so that's valuable. And he has hits, and I don't know what he did today because I know they played earlier, but he had 2 hits in 2 straight games. You're in 7 of 8 games, only owned in 28% of league.
Wow.
So if you need a shortstop, go get him.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have any pitchers that I felt comfortable talking about as far as pickups are concerned. So who do you have as far as drops?
My boy Luis Urias in Milwaukee.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him in a minute. So
he was hurt by the trade to bring in Eduardo Escobar. He's still going to be playing. He's still going to get opportunity. Escobar is going to play first base some against left-handed pitchers, and he'll probably play third base against right-handed pitchers, which means Urias is only going to be playing sparingly. And Urias has done all right, especially as of late. But he's the one in Milwaukee that got hurt the most by the trade that they made. So he's a guy that you probably isn't worth hanging on to at this point. If something happens, another injury, they've had some COVID issues, so maybe opportunities will open up because of that as well. But right now, I don't think he's worth having on your team. CJ Crone, we've talked about him before as a possibility to pick up. I know Graham is kind of big on CJ Crone as well. But in my opinion, if he's on your roster right now, you're probably could do better at first base than him. Those are the 2 guys mainly that I've got in front of me that make the most sense, at least when it comes to batters there. That's probably you need to drop those guys right now.
Okay, because you remember last week, Vince, I talked about how I just happened to trade Luis Urias for Yuli Gurriel.
Yeah,
I have to say that trade worked out for me, because Yuli Gurriel has 5 straight with 2 or more hits. 5 straight. And he has 1 home run, 7 RBIs, and 5 runs scored in in the last week since I made that trade. So, winner Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay. So unfortunately, Urias, he's a loser.
Yeah.
So, but that's the other guy's problem now.
Right.
So good for him. And another guy, we talked about him, and I don't understand. You guys that are owners out there, please help me understand this. How Nick Solak is still on 50% of leagues and ESPN leagues, and he's not even in the major leagues. Help me to understand. He wasn't hitting because he's in AAA. That's why.
Right.
If he was hitting, he'd be in the major leagues. So come on, he needs to be owned in 0% of league. So that guy needs to go. Another guy that needs to go is Carson Kelly. As I mentioned earlier, Dalton Varsho is the guy to own in Arizona. He just came off the injured list. I'm talking about Kelly. Went 0 for 6.
Yeah.
So I see nothing that's, there's no bright prospects there for him. So I'm not going to hold on to him at all. And a guy that got traded that we haven't talked about, that's Rich Hill. Got traded to the Mets. And it has been an absolute horror show for him since he went to New York. Let me see if I got this right. 10 innings he's pitched as a Met. He's given up 7 runs on 10 hits.
Whew.
That's not good.
No,
not good at all. And he's a guy that doesn't go that deep in the games, even when he was pitching well. So I see no reason to hang on to that guy at all. His ERA in his last 4 starts, 5.40, 6.75, 5.40, and 7.20. He needs to go to the outhouse. All right. So, what are some players you think that aren't maybe playing so well that you think we should hold on to that might turn it around?
Well, right now the guys that aren't playing so well are actually some of the bigger name guys. So it's hard to, if you say, well, you shouldn't get rid of them, everybody go, well, yeah, of course you shouldn't. Yastrzemski, he's not been looking good as of late in San Francisco, but you're not going to let him go. Benintendi is another guy that I believe in him. I believed in him from the start of the season, and I've had him on all of my fantasy teams at one point or another. I think I have him on at least two of them now. But nonetheless, he's a guy that he's not been producing the way you want to produce. He's on a bad team, so that doesn't help either. I'm always cautious of those guys on bad teams, but at the end of the day, I think you got to hold on to them. Then the other one is just the pitchers. Sometimes we see these pitchers and we freak out over them.
Yes,
people were over Kyle Gibson. People were letting go of him. And I'm sitting there thinking, you cannot do that. He's too good. It will come back around. Of course, now he's been traded, and so that in that case, it's worth it there as well. So those are the guys I'm kind of looking at. That have had some rough stretches that you're going to hang on to.
Well, a couple of players that I have is one of them's J.D. Davis. And then we talked about the Mets, and they added Baez, and you have to think that we've been waiting all season. Their offense is going to have to get better.
Yeah. And
he's 0 for his last 11, but I wouldn't cut him just yet. And a couple of pitchers that I have that you talked about, names like Eduardo Rodriguez is not really the biggest name of all time, but he's pitched well earlier in the season. But he just gave up 6 runs on 7 hits and 3 in the 3rd innings against Toronto. And Toronto, as we know, can thump the ball.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the 2 starts before that, he gave up no run. So I'm not going to flush him down just yet. And the last pitcher is Tukey Tousant. Does that sound about right for him?
That's something like that, yeah.
Okay. So
for Atlanta?
Yes, Atlanta. Yeah. He gave up 7 runs on 6 hits in 3 and a 3rd innings. Not good at all. But before that, in 13 and 2/3 innings, he gave up 2 runs. So I'm not ready to, to hit the flusher on him either.
Yeah.
So to those guys are the ones that I'm going to hold on to if I happen to have them. So, Vince, tell us how your fantasy teams are doing.
Oh, man, it's miserable. I was so close last week to having a good week all the way around, and I ended up not. Well, one of the league I basically had to buy. I have a guy that wasn't paying, hasn't been paying attention, hasn't been setting his lineup. So that one was fine. But as a whole, man, I'm so frustrated because I'm making moves, I'm watching things. In my Yahoo league, every week I miss one starter for whatever reason. I didn't. They haven't been. It's Yahoo's fault. They haven't been showing me the green check mark for all my guys. And I go back and look, and the guy's got 25 points, and he's sitting on my bench. I'm like, come on. So overall, it's been a discouraging year in those regards, and I'm kind of just holding out hope that I can make a run here at the end of the season, or that other people's injuries will catch up with them, and I'll have an opportunity to sneak into the playoffs.
Well, over here in the Wilson Fantasy League, as I was saying last week, it was me first place against the other team that was in first place. We went toe to toe, and it was really. And yesterday, at the start of play, we were 2 points apart. So I wound up winning by 29. So I took him down, even though I made the huge mistake of starting Austin Gomber against the Padres.
Me too.
And he gave up 4 runs in the first inning. I'm like, dude, really? So, but even though that disaster occurred, I happened to take him down. So it's looking good. I'm in first place, and I've beaten the guys that are right behind me. So all is good in the Wilson Fantasy world. So and you'll be happy to know, Vince, that we talked about Aroldis Chapman, how I added him to my team. He has saves in 5 straight.
There you go.
So that worked out. I just thought, well, somebody dropped him. I'm like, he's too good and I added him. I thought it was a no lose. And it turned out that's exactly what it is. It was no lose. So
you got him.
All right. So Vince, I know that you're super busy. You're out there all over the place. So what are you working on?
Oh man, it's just football season's coming right around the corner. So right now on the podcast, we're doing the college football previews. We'll wrap it up this week on Tuesday. We have an episode at 8:00 on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at Sports Stove on Twitter. We're doing the Big 12 and the Pac-12 on Tuesday night. And then on Thursday night, we'll conclude our college football preview with the SEC. And then after that, we get into the NFL and start doing the breakdowns of the NFL. And we always cover the major sports news at the beginning of the episodes as well. So a lot of things happening, again, on Twitter at Sports Stove, Facebook, YouTube, the Sports Stove Pod, and then anywhere you get your podcast, you can find the Sports Stove Podcast there as well.
So when you're talking about the Big 12, are you going to bring somebody on that can maybe save a blessing for them?
I ran a poll. It's running right now on at Sports Stove on Twitter. Who is the best team right now in Texas in the Big 12? And the last time I looked, Baylor is winning the poll, which kind of threw me. It tells me not a whole lot of people are paying attention to the Big 12 this year, but nonetheless. It's going to be an interesting episode going through both the Big 12 and the Pac-12. Some really interesting teams, and the Big 12 is going through all the drama right now, which only adds to the excitement also. And it's going to be fun. No big guests. My dad joins me. He'll be on both of those episodes to talk through those as well. We reached out to a ton of programs. And we heard back from several of them, and just the timing wasn't right to get all the coaches. We did have Tom Allen from Indiana on for the Big Ten, but we've been turned down by everyone else that we've responded or reached out to as well. So we still have some invites out that maybe before Thursday we might be able to land somebody still. But for the most part, we're just going to just be me and Dad rolling through the rest of these college football teams.
All right, so. As far as I'm concerned, you can always find me on Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA. And as I mentioned earlier, I had an article that dropped about I changed things around a little bit. I didn't do an article on waiver pickups. I did one on who I thought were the fantasy winners at the trade deadline. And so and just so you guys know, the fantasy winners are players, not teams, because I keep getting these emails and messages going, hey, the Dodgers won. Well, that's great, but I'm not talking about teams. I'm talking about fantasy players. Okay, so just make that clear. And so you can find that article out there on the Belly Up Fantasy site. And you can always find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook. So anyone that has any questions at all regarding fantasy, please drop me a line. I'd be more than happy to discuss it with you. So given all that, that's pretty much what we have for our show today. Any closing thoughts, Vince?
Man, I don't think so. What an exciting week of baseball.
It is.
And
come on, guys, let's get on this baseball train because it's going to be a fabulous ride. If people want to talk about football and everything else, baseball is where it's at.
I'll say it one more time. Philadelphia Phillies are going to win the East.
Philadelphia Phillies. I'm thinking I agree with you 100%. I know Graham's talking about the Mets. I'm with you. Philadelphia is winning that East Division. So, given all that, we are very happy for everyone that joined us today. We are very glad that Graham Wallace joined us on our show. And he always brings on the power, which you saw for yourselves. So we hope to have him around in the future. And you guys have yourself a great night.